nicest thing you've ever said to me. It really is the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
It probably is.
Hello and welcome to the 4080 Rule. We are a podcast focused on current events in the music industry. My name is Michael Grubbs. I'm a 20-year music industry veteran. In the past lives, I've hit #1 on the music industry heatseeker chart, been awarded by the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and now I'm proud to be head of A&R at Kilphonic Rights. Joining me as always is our industry authority, Mr. Caleb Shreve. Caleb has over 25 years of industry experience, having worked directly with recognizable artists such as Jennifer Lopez, Phanogram, Switchfoot, and Tegan and Sara. Also today, I am absolutely the most thrilled ever. I have joining us my partner in crime, Miss Kate Vogel. She is a Billboard chart-topping artist. What else am I supposed to say, Kate? You're the boss. You're a boss.
I thought you had the blurb.
Dude. I'm a recording artist, singer, songwriter. It's the only job I've ever had. I love it. It's wonderful. And I'm also one half of Your Future Ghost, which is my band with Mike, and we're having a blast.
That's true.
Guess what? I've had one other job in my life, and it was working for my father, and it's the only job I've ever been fired from, just as a little side note. So, yeah, I've only had one job in my life other than music.
Your father fired you from work?
Yeah.
Wow. I've had every job. I've had every job in the world that you can possibly have. And now here I am. Kate, you never worked at like a sandwich shop for a day or anything like that?
No, man. I played my first gigs when I was like a sophomore in high school. And so they were like, shitty gigs at like local coffee houses where no one was paying me anything. But then, I was also extremely fortunate that my parents were like really supportive of my dream. And so, I was very lucky to have parents who would drive me to my shows, and they weren't like, you have to, find your way. And so totally like a privileged thing to be able to have such a supportive structure. But yeah, I got signed my freshman year of college and just like started going. So I've been lucky to have been able to, run around the country enough before all of that started to get things moving. So it's been
legit rock star.
Yeah.
I'll definitely say, jobs are overrated, so I'm with you.
Jobs suck. You were hit with the fairy dust from a young age. You went straight to the top, but you still have that everyman vibe. There's a lot of Cleveland in you, I think, that comes through and keeps you relatable, which I think is why you do so well a lot of times. So people,
thank you.
You're so amazing. So today we are going to talk about some big things that are going on in the music industry. We're just going to cover a couple of news stories. We have Kate here because she's an authority on our second story. Our first story today, according to Digital Music News, the majority of Spotify's over 100 million tracks haven't ever secured 1,000 streams. They don't have 1,000 streams all time from their inception until today. And a much smaller percentage have not or will not ever be able to generate over 1,000 streams during a 12-month period. And Spotify has just announced that they're planning to stop payments for the lowest tier or the lowest performing tracks entirely. No royalties whatsoever on the master or on the composition starting in 2024. They haven't said exactly what the number is. The number is rumored to be 1,000 streams. So I don't know, Caleb, do you want to kick us off? What do you think about that? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it nothing?
Yeah, I think first off, I think they did announce it was going to be 1,000 streams a year. That's their benchmark. We tried to talk a little about this.
I don't read, so I don't know, but that's
good to know. Yeah, that's what's going around the water cooler. Is it's 1,000 streams per year per song. I initially think that people might be surprised that I don't think it's a huge deal. To be honest, I think that. 1,000 streams, there is a lot of noise on Spotify, and I don't necessarily, think that I like the idea that some of that money is going to be diverted to what they're trying to create as a professional musician class on Spotify. That's not a bad idea. I think the precedent, though, can be looked at as really bad if they start raising this 1,000 to 10,000, 200,000, and all of a sudden the only people that are getting paid are the top 0.01%.
Right now, they say 1,000 streams adds up to about $3. So for these songs that aren't generating 1,000 streams a year, those artists are losing $3 per song that they have on their track. So even if they have 100 tracks out there losing $300 a year, which is not nothing by any means, but it's not a sustainable business model, probably.
I also don't like the motivation of it. I think that what happened was, again, I always talk about rights and stuff, but the mechanical royalty rates are going up, and that's going to be, 5% more of the pie is going to go to the mechanical publishing rights. And they have been talking about raising rates and coming up with different user-centric or artist-centric models in the industry for a while. And I don't like that this was like, okay, how are we going to make up the extra 5% we're losing on the master now? And immediately their thought was, we'll just take it from the lowest class and the people who can't really have any leverage to push back. So
I want to jump in and actually define a couple of things that you just said for any listeners that don't know. First off, the way that they define different payout models, term they use for it a lot of times is either artist-centric or user-centric. User-centric was if you have an account with Spotify, whoever you listen to, your money is split up amongst those artists solely. That's it. So if you only listen to Kate Vogel, if you only listen to Your Future Ghost, if you only listen to Coldplay for an entire month, then your whole $10-15 will go just to Coldplay, or just to Kate Vogel, or just to whatever artist you choose to listen to. Yeah. Artist-centric is this new model where they're trying to create different tiers of artists amongst the community. So they'll say someone like, Post Malone is a real artist because he gets a certain number of streams per year. Therefore, he deserves more money. So that's the difference between artist-centric and user-centric.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they necessarily are trying to create tiers. It's the system now is what they call pro rata. So it's like they take the number of streams divided by the amount of money in the pot and pay per stream or per listen, and the user-centric model is taking it away from the pro rata model and like you said, divvying up a user's subscription fee to the artist they listen to. The artist-centric model was a way to keep somewhat of the pro rata system in place, but to then push more money to what they were calling professional artists. But it was actually, that term was coined, I believe, by Lucian Grange at Universal. I don't think it was like artists were talking about an artist-centric model and then the labels came in and hijacked it. It was always kind of developed as this like branding of like, oh, it's not about the user, it's about the artist, and we need to make sure the artist is represented. But truthfully, the user-centric model solves so many problems. It solves all the fraud problems, all the bots that are listening to things over and over. If we get off the pro rata system, bots have no ability to fraudulently create streams anymore because they can listen to streams all day, but the account they're using to do that is where the money's coming from. So there'd be a net zero in a user-centric model for fraudulent streams. The only problem with the user-centric model was that they found in testing that it took money from the top and put it to the middle class, and that's what they hated about it.
Can't have that, right?
Yeah, and they basically the only complaint for them, the only like rationalization I should say from them was that if they lose money from the top, then they will no longer be able to support artists anymore, which is like that makes me laugh more than anything because they're just not doing that anymore. They're not supporting artists. But that's the only complaint is that, if the majors can't make the money that they do, then nobody's going to be out there supporting artists anymore. And that would be a travesty to culture.
Aren't they saying this is kind of one of a series of moves that they're doing in order to try and divert over 2024 $1 billion of revenue over something crazy like that? Like, did you tell me
I
earlier?
haven't heard that,
like,
no.
What is
it's only 46.
Amount?
It's about $46 million, which is not a lot. It's about 0.5%. The entire payout from Spotify every year is about $9 billion. So 46 million, which is really the crazy. I mean, if you get into the numbers of it, which is why I'm like, this isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, first of all, 80% of the songs on Spotify don't qualify for 1,000 streams a year. So 80%. I mean, there's 160,000 songs uploaded every day to Spotify. There's just so much noise that I understand that people want to make a difference between people just throwing it up like it's a social media platform and people who are on there trying to sell music and promote their band. But yeah, 80% of the platform only equates to $46 million. Is crazy when they pay out $9 billion a year. So
I think we were all in this together. I mean, Kate, I know you and I got our start around the same time in the industry, and it was when things were being democratized, and suddenly everybody in the world had, like Pro Tools or Logic or GarageBand, and was able to make their own music, and it completely changed the industry, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, it completely changed the industry, and for the better, I think. For in many ways, I mean, there's absolutely something really amazing about saying there's so many artists who, if they just had access to a laptop or somebody who had a laptop, some of these incredible voices who never maybe would have been able to be heard had, things not become democratized like that. I think it's ultimately a really great thing. But of course, with that came the technology, of streaming, and the way that that kind of developed into this whole different way in which people consume music. And, for me, I got signed to my first deal in 2007, and it was an indie label, and then I was upstream to a major in 2008. And between that release and my second album release on a major label, I sold like 500,000 albums, and it was just a different time. Like as an
Yeah.
artist, you sold, SoundScan was a thing. It obviously still is, but it's very, very different to talk about how many sales you've had versus how many streams you've had. Now it's sort of this completely split up thing. And so I think that it's been kind of a double-edged sword in that sense, where it's been amazing that people can upload their music and share it and distribute it, and you don't have to sort of have the gatekeeper. But at the same time, then you have, like you said, Caleb, 80% of this stuff on Spotify that is not hitting this threshold. Those are wild figures.
We talked about this too, that like an indie band was like shooting for 20, 30,000 CD sales.
Yeah.
50,000 was amazing. And at like
It was
20,
gold.
yeah.
Yeah.
And at $20 a CD, even 20 or 30,000 CDs had hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue for the label and for the band and for everybody. So that's just gone. I mean, you need millions of streams. A million streams now is only like $3,000 or something. So
it's a joke. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, it's totally crazy. So yeah, the whole thing is the system is screwed up, and it's sad that I feel like this user-centric model really does again solve it, because if you have real fans that are listening to your music, you're getting paid. But they need to keep the system to where no matter what, I mean, the reason it's so skewed really is because there's these family plans now. They're like $4.99 a month, and the average, I think they did a thing that even though we pay $9.99 a month, the average subscription I think is $4.99, because there's so many free tiers and so many ad tiers and so many family plans and all these things that it brings the cost way down. And those people that are paying the $4.99 are the kids who are listening to Taylor Swift over and over and over and just racking up those numbers. And bands that have, an older following, a legacy following, people that go to tour, to shows when they're on tour, like, are not spending as much time listening to it. So they're really not getting their fair share. And I know that they try to say the brand of artist-centric is better than user-centric because it's about the artist. But really, I think focusing on the fan is the way to go. And they're not doing that now.
I think focusing it on the fan is actually the best way to focus it truly on the artist and connect the artist to fan, which is what people are trying to do. So for anybody at home that's listening, if you're an artist and you want to have input into conversations like this, the main takeaway for me is there's artist-centric and there's user-centric, and there's a massive difference between those two things. So you should educate yourself about the difference.
The really interesting thing is whether or not this is legal, though. This is what came up this morning.
That was
there's
my
a guy
question.
named there's a guy named George Johnson who actually had a lot to do with
George Johnson.
He's like a folk hero for people in rights like me. He's the one. The NMPA had accepted a very small rate increase in the mechanicals. I think it was from 10.2 to like 10.5. It was like 0.3%.
Jumping in, the NMPA is the National Music Publishers Association.
But George Johnson said, "Hey, the NMP doesn't represent me. I'm an independent songwriter, and those rates and those raises don't parity what they're doing on the physical side, so I don't accept them." And he took him to court, and he won, and that's why the mechanical rates are going up to 15% instead of 10, or sticking around 10. He now again is going to sue Spotify if they go through with this next year, saying that it is illegal to not pay the statutory rates for mechanical licenses. So that is, people like Jeff Price, who I know well, and is another great folk legend in the music rights and publishing space. He thinks it's cut and dry, but I don't know, there are other platforms that are not paying for royalties and publishing royalties and are getting away with it. So I'm curious to how that actually may spill over to the TikToks and things like that, who are not paying as well. So
I'll jump in with another definition for I'll jump in for everyone back home. A statutory rate is any kind of rate that is decided by the courts. So it's a rate that you have to pay for the usage of something and that the owner of it has to grant.
Yeah. So it used to be 9.1 cents for physicals on CD. Every song on a CD had to pay 9.1 cents to the publisher. Now on streaming, it's transferred to a percentage of the publishing rights. So it's 15%, which is why I wonder if it really is going to be considered illegal, because if there is no fee paid at all, it's a percentage of the fee that they have to pay to the mechanicals. So I don't know. It's a gray area that obviously the courts are going to have to decide, but whether it's legal or not at all.
I feel like we've touched on this well. I think we should talk about what the music industry really wants us to talk about, which is Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, obviously, love her, hate her, whatever you feel about her, she is a really, really savvy business person. There's something called a re-record clause that has been around for a long time, where a record label will say, if we pay for you to make this recording, you can't record it again for 7 to 10 years, 5 years, sometimes 5 to 10 years, I guess. So when that term was up, Taylor started re-recording her first album. She's done 4 so far, and that has been massive for her. She's had 65 songs in the Apple Music Top 100 in this last year. She just was awarded Apple Music's Artist of the Year. It's been a massive thing, and obviously, she's getting to the point where she's going to be a household name soon. But the other thing that's happened, though, is for her label, this has massively devalued the masters. And one could say that they had something to do with her becoming who she is. So there's a lot to unpack here. I don't know.
I think it came out today that
it's
the original masters have lost 44% of their market share since she put the new, or 1989 specifically, her newest release. The original 1989 has lost 44% of streaming since she put her new version out. So, I think Kate's best to speak on this. She's somebody who is a female artist who's had a major label success and a major label contract. So I'll step back and because I do think it's about how artists feel about their music and their masters.
Kate, how do you feel? Would you want to re-record your songs from earlier in your career?
Did we also just put an idea in Kate's head that's going to really piss off?
No. Oh my God, no. I think what's funny is I've thought of re-recording my music a million times over the years. I probably will at some point. Maybe not the entire record, but maybe some of the more popular songs or whatever. I own all the publishing on all of my music from that era again. And so it would be pretty cut and dry for me to do it. And it would be a fun thing, artistically. I think the arena where Taylor Swift is obviously incredibly unique here is that she really transcends so much of what most artists are going to be capable of. Like, if I re-record some of my music, I am not going to be able to afford the studios, the producers, I'm certainly not going to be able to afford the type of production that, we were spending money on for my original masters, right? Like Mike Elizondo produced my second record. Unbelievably talented person, incredible musician, incredible producer. Was amazing to work with him. Probably not going to be in my budget to hire him again to do, an updated version. And so I think, Taylor has gotten to the point where she can do whatever she wants, and I think that is difficult for people. And I hate to say it, but there is a part of me that wonders, would we all be viewing this in the same way if she were a male artist, if it was a male band? I think there's an aspect to this that is, she kind of was able to say, I own all of this and I can go ahead and do what I want with it, because I think, I don't know all the facts, but I feel like they would not play ball with her when she wanted to negotiate on buying those original masters back, right? Is that correct? They were just like, we're not going to come to the table. We sold it to this guy. She wasn't crazy about this guy. There was some bad blood there, maybe. And
Scooter Braun, we can say it, Scooter Braun, but nobody likes Scooter Braun.
Scooter. So she wasn't a fan of, right? I think that was sort of what prompted this, was she was not happy about that. And, I don't think that I don't think there's anything wrong with what she did. I think it's a badass move. I think it's a power move, and I think men do things like this all the time in the music industry and just in the world as a whole. I understand why her label is bummed about it. I understand why Scooter, as somebody who purchased the rights to those masters, is not thrilled. For sure, that sucks. But I think this type of stuff happens all the time, and it does sort of beg the question, who has the right over that IP to go, out and say, I'm going to make a new version of this that I'm going to pay for with my money that I earned because I became the most successful, I'm recently a billionaire, right? Like, I think it's a difficult thing. I understand why labels are having to sort of reassess, how they structure their contracts because of this. But at the same time, I think, she parted ways with that label. Those masters have made millions of dollars for the people who are involved, who are on the take. Scooter's doing fine, probably. The masters are still going to make him a ton of money. So I don't see why, she shouldn't be able to go out and spend her own money on. And also, you have to acknowledge how much money she spent on the marketing of these re-releases, right? Taylor's version marketing is like off the chain, right? She's an unbelievable business person. She's a total mastermind. And so I think, most artists aren't going to be in her position. They're not going to be able to afford to sort of recreate these masters and then spend millions of dollars marketing it to the point where they're going to land in the Apple Music top whatever and totally devalue the old versions of their songs by 44%. It's a pretty unique situation, I think, is my take. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's also a thing now that most artists aren't going to be able to do that moving forward because the word is now that labels are extending these in new contracts to as much as 30 years now. Yeah. So the reverberations of this badass power move are very real for everyone that is not in the billionaire class.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think kind of to your point, it's like it really does make a difference when you're Taylor Swift, and it doesn't maybe make a difference when you're not, is kind of, I think, what you're saying.
That's how I feel completely. Yeah.
In that situation, does it have to change then? Is it really important for it to change? Or are they just making things something harder for people who could potentially, almost get their rights back in 7 years? They're not getting the master rights back, but they're taking the power over to say, hey, I want to produce my own versions of these songs or something,
right.
One of these badass woman starts producing other artists and becomes really skilled and talented. I mean, this happened. I was managing an artist named Milk, and she sold her masters to Atlantic, and they made her re-record a song. It was about female empowerment that she recorded with a female producer. They made her re-record it with a bunch of male producers, and it just lost all of the heart that she had put into it with this other bond that she made with the female producer. And then they wanted to go back and they made a version that they're calling their reclaimed version of this song. And she got special permission from Atlantic to do it, but if they wanted to prevent it from her, she wouldn't be able to do anything. And I guess in that situation, where does it land on what's morally right about owning another person's artwork and preventing them from making versions of the songs that they want to have out in the world just for pure business?
And I think it's one thing if the label is continuing to be involved in the artist's work and they're continuing to support the artist, right, financially and strategically, and all these things that they say that, they're going to lose the ability to do if artists get more freedom or make more money, even though it's ridiculous. I mean, very, very, very few people are making 100% of their income making music because it's very difficult to get there. Taylor Swift definitely is an outlier, in so many ways with this situation. But I agree with you that I think it's one thing if, that artist's label is continuing to support her. But if they have gone their separate ways and, she's not working with them anymore and not getting any benefit from them, paying tour support or paying, having a huge digital marketing team in-house or any of these things that labels, often provide to artists, if you're not benefiting from that anymore, you should be able to, after a reasonable amount of time, which of course, it's all about defining what that is, right. You should be able to take that music, if you own the publishing and you have the rights from the other people who own the publishing, to go make something else with it. I think it's a disservice to the creativity and to the art, to sort of try to stifle that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard rumors that the label actually has recouped on the records too. The initial.
There's
recordings
no
by
way
Taylor
they
Swift.
haven't. There's no way they haven't.
Like a billion times they've recouped. A billion times.
Yeah, I'm no mathematician, but fuck,
yeah. That's the point. It's like if it really makes a difference, then they've probably made a ton of money off of it at this point. And if they haven't made their money, then they're probably not going to. And we need to all be stuck in like you can't re-record your music because of some contract that's 30 years for re-recording. I don't know. It seems crazy to extend it to me.
Yeah, and it's like for the label, it's like go develop the next Taylor Swift. I think it's sort of like also one of those things where you did your job. You catapulted this artist who also had something to do with it too, right? This artist played a huge role. Definitely takes both to tango, and she is clearly like, she's played such a role in. I mean, they've said she's obsessive about where careers go wrong and all this stuff, and most artists are not going to be as remarkable as sort of completely game changing as Taylor Swift, but I think that is kind of that was a successful partnership for the time. There was a partnership, and they still have those masters. Go find ways, get creative, and figure out how to elevate the masters that you do own. Those original Taylor Swift songs, you guys go figure out how to make it so that people want to listen to those, instead of her new versions, which nobody can really touch her because she has instructed her audience very well that, so, it's a unique situation. I get why it's a bummer for labels and why they're doing something about it, but it's tricky.
I think I heard that she used Michael Grubbs' career as an analyst of how a career goes wrong too, by the way.
That actually is. I could write a book.
Yeah.
I think on that note, I think that's a good way for us to wrap it up today. Unless anyone has any other takeaways, this has been the 40/80 Rule podcast. I'm Michael Grubbs. This is Caleb Shreve. I want to give a big shout out to Kate Vogel from the amazing chart-topping band Your Future Ghost, and also from Kate Vogel online. You can find them. But thanks everyone for tuning in today, and we will be back next week with more music industry topics and hot.